This was some years ago when I was living in a different city. I hadn't really been on my own all that long, and my housing situation fell apart at the last minute, so I had to scramble to figure it out. Meaning, you guessed it, random roommates. Now, the year before, I had a random roommate that was an amazing person and ended up becoming a great friend, so I figured this would be the same. It was not, but actually, that's not the focus of the story. Enter roommates, Ben, who I did actually know a bit from the previous year and was becoming friends with, Tom, and Mike. Now this was the very first couple of days after moving in, and we all hung out to get to know each other a little better, but Tom and Mike hadn't fully moved in yet. It was a big old house, separated by floor, and the top level locked at the stairs. This is important to note. Ben and I lived upstairs and Tom and Mike downstairs. I've always been paranoid and definitely have a good reason. So when I'm home, all the doors are locked, and when I leave, all the doors are locked. I sleep with my bedroom locked. I was home alone, Ben was at work, and Tom and Mike sort of in and out moving stuff in. I'll note here that both had a lot of expensive stuff, like in the 5-figure range. Well, I was watching something on my laptop in my room, bedroom locked, and both entrances to my part of the house locked. I start hearing a lot of noises coming from downstairs, sounding like the doors of the cupboards opening, furniture moving, etc., and figured it was just Tom or Mike, until I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I was technically supposed to be somewhere at the time, which they knew, but it canceled last minute, so no one would have known I was home, and they would have no reason to come upstairs when they both knew I was supposed to be gone. That's when I got panicky. Hearing them come closer and closer to the top of the stairs, I never sat so still. Then the knob started to jiggle. I could hear it clearly as my room was closest to the entryway. At this point, I'm on the phone with 911 whispering that someone was in my house, without giving away that I was there to whoever it was. The house was super close to downtown and the cops arrived there in minutes, but they were the longest of my life at that moment. The downstairs was completely ransacked, like something out of a movie. It was so surreal to see. They had taken over $20,000 in electronics, broken furniture, plates, and stuff, even ripped through the mattress. Turned out Tom and Mike had left the door unlocked while moving. This would not be the last time before I fled the house. The intruder was gone before the cops showed, so I spent the next several months afraid that they would come back, though it would turn out to be the least of my future worries. So glad that I always locked doors. Considering the way the downstairs looked, I don't know what they would have done to me. To whoever was on the other side of that thankfully locked door, let's not meet. In college, 2008 through 2014, I was an avid metal detectorist. I knew of an old military trail and river crossing way back in the secluded portion of the woods that I knew not many others were aware of. I finally decided one winter morning that I was going to go and metal detect. The trail was a mile or two away from a city park along the South Concho River in San Angelo, Texas. I parked my truck, got all my gear, which included a serrated knife for digging, and began my trek through the raw woods and brush for the trail. About halfway into the trees, I get to a clearing and find a tent and a campsite about 40 yards back from the river and very isolated. There's cans laying all around it, some clothes, and other stuff that made it evident that someone was using it. I didn't hang around there for long and kept on my way. As I was getting past the tent, this haggard-looking guy comes out from the brush just a few feet away from me. I startled him as much as he startled me, and after some innocent chit-chat back and forth, he asked me what I was doing in the woods. I told him about the old trail, my metal detecting stuff, and lied that it was a pretty well-known site for hobbyists like me. The latter seemed to get him a bit anxious. He starts asking me if I messed with his campsite any, and I told him no, except for accidentally stepping on one of the cans. He was mostly concerned if I had looked inside his tent itself though, which truthfully, I hadn't. The guy relayed that his wife had kicked him out of their apartment a few days ago, and that he was just staying in the woods until he got back on his feet. It really didn't add up in my mind, but I didn't ask anything else about it. Finally, I told him I was gonna get on my way, and with a weird look on his face, he suggested that I not go behind his campsite because he had recently used the bathroom back there. Whether there was fresh fertilizer or not, no way I was gonna be hanging around much longer regardless. I went a little further towards the trail I wanted to metal detect on, but never felt quite comfortable. So I made a quick turn towards the river and headed back to my truck fairly rapidly. Never saw the guy again until about 2 years later. His picture was in the local news for being apprehended by authorities for the murder of his wife. He killed her and had buried her in the exact area of the woods where I encountered him on that day. Apparently, even though I couldn't recall if it was that day of the crime or not, he had just completed the matter when we had met. I recently went on a date with a guy from my school who I met on a dating app. He seemed super sweet and charming over text, so I agreed to go on a date with him, especially after two friends told me they knew him from class where he was a generally funny guy. We go to a small, pretty prestigious university, which also made me sure that he would be normal. He was supposed to meet me at 6 to go on a picnic, but ended up picking me up at 8:30. He drove me to his apartment, and although uncomfortable, I agreed to go in because of everything I already knew about him. The apartment was only lit with one candle and a small glowing light on the floor, which didn't add much. It was a multiple bedroom apartment that he lived in alone, which made it even more odd. We talked and ate some food, and he seemed nervous and uneasy for most of it. He suddenly switched the conversation to our deepest, darkest secrets and asked if I ever seriously thought about killing anyone. After I said no, he made up a story about being in the Navy and having to bomb a ship and killing 5 people. When I was unsure how to respond, he sort of just passed it off as a joke and said that he had a serious thought of killing someone else, his ex, current boyfriend. I was extremely uncomfortable at this point and wanted to leave, and he agreed to drive me home. Before we left, he said he wanted to show something to me and pulled out a rifle that he pointed in my direction. When I got startled, he remained eerily calm and said that he got it for hunting, but couldn't think of ever killing an animal. We left, and I got back to my friend's place safely. Everyone I've told has been flabbergasted about how the date went, and I can't shake the feeling that something is off about him, and it's creeping me out. Any thoughts on this would be appreciated. It was my day off, and my husband was traveling for work. I just came upstairs after running on the treadmill, which we keep on the ground floor where the garage is. I came upstairs and was about to hop into the shower, but on my way up I saw these 2 plastic skeletons I bought for Halloween. The plan was to hang them up on the awning so it looked like they were sitting on our front balcony. It was a bit dirty out there, so I decided to put them up before I got into the shower. So I was outside in a sports bra and leggings only. I had to bring a chair from the dining room outside so that I could reach the top of the awning. There were hooks for hanging up plants there, so I was using said hooks to hang the skeletons. The door to my house was ajar while I was doing this. I was done hanging them up and adjusting their poses when a woman came running up the stairs to our front door. To be honest, I was startled that there was a random woman on my porch that when she said, "I'm dying of thirst, I'm so thirsty, can I have some water?" I went inside and grabbed a water bottle. We had recently had a box of bottled waters delivered, so they were just right inside. The woman followed me inside and I started panicking as I realized I was now inside the house with a strange woman. There's a lot of homeless people and junkies in the neighborhood, but she was well dressed. Besides that, she was wearing a wool peacoat in 80-degree weather, which is odd. I'm a small person and she was probably a head taller than me and outweighed me by at least 30 pounds. She chugged the water bottle and started chatting with me as if we were old friends. She asked me how long I had this house and where my parents were. I'm over 30, so that was a weird question. I told her my parents never lived here and then said, I have to leave soon, so you better get going, and literally shoved her out the door. I texted my husband who was overseas and he could see the ring camera that she left the property. He kept asking why I let her in. Honestly, I'm not sure why, but I also didn't expect her to follow me inside. So, strange woman from the sidewalk who just came into my house. Let's not meet. 9 years ago, I had met a person that to this day I still wish I never did. I was an isolated, bullied, and depressed 8th grader with the added state of being a plus-size kid in a sports-centric town. So basically, I was beaten and ridiculed on a daily basis. I couldn't make any friends with my new classmates. All my old friends from elementary school got placed in different classes, and nobody was in the same after-school groups as me anymore. We also were in a scout group, but that got disbanded before I went to middle school. I was also lonely, that if someone talked to me without picking on me, it made me happy. I had a Google Plus account, the only social media I could access at school that I kept hidden from my parents. I would use it to check my favorite fandoms and hopefully use it to make some new friends. One day, I was on Google Plus in the computer lab. I had commented under a piece of fan art of a character I liked. The person who made the post had replied to me not even a minute later. I remember getting very excited seeing that notification, my heart swelling up in excitement. The two of us spent the next 10 minutes of my class talking to each other in the comment section. We ended up replying so much, we flooded a good portion of the comments with our talk. After I had to change classes, I logged back in on one of the Chromebooks we had stored in the back of the class and saw that she actually messaged me. Her name was Haley. At least, she told me that was her name. But years later, I'm not so sure it was her actual name. In the message I got, Haley told me that she was 2 years older than me and that we had a lot of things in common. I spent the rest of the school day on my phone, not giving a damn to do anything in my classes. We talked for the next week in her DMs until she suggested that we message each other in a private chat room. Later that day, we made a private chat on an online messaging site. We first talked on messages, then Haley asked if we could do a voice call. I told her I wasn't sure, but she told me it was only to better hold a conversation with me, and eventually, after she asked me multiple times, I gave in. After an hour of us talking, she suggested a video chat. I agreed, both to make sure she was actually my age, but also to put a name to the face. Haley turned on the camera and she did look the same age range as me. I don't know why, but that fact haunts me more than anything else. The fact that she looked close to my age, plus that she easily smiled and spoke so friendly to me, made me feel like I had nothing to be afraid of. So that led me quickly to believing I could trust her. We ended up talking for hours after, with me practically on cloud 9 the entire time. In the beginning of our little friendship, things were going alright. We told each other about our schools, what we liked, and were gushing over our favorite series. We talked almost every day, and stayed up late talking nearly all night. We even exchanged a couple silly pictures of ourselves and memes back and forth a lot. After we had been talking for 6 months, Haley asked me if I would want to meet her friends. At first, I was ecstatic, and the thought of having more friends made me so excited I didn't think twice before saying yes. Haley invited me in, and I got to meet her other friends. I had a completely different feeling about these people compared to what I felt for Haley. Something made me feel unsafe in that chat room, even though they all seemed nice and Haley reassured me I could trust them. It felt like my instincts were trying to warn me, but I wasn't sure what about, so I ignored it. Most of them were, much older than me. In the chat with their main friends, there were 6 other people. Most of them were 18 or 19, but there was these 2 guys I distinctly remember being in their 20s. I asked how they all met, and they told me that they met each other on another social media site or from real life, but wouldn't answer any more of my questions. I was a bit naive, so all of the red flags that were popping up went completely over my head. From constant loud talking to frequent overlapping each other, the calls I were on with them were pure chaos. The messages were even worse because they would frequently drop cuss words and topics that should not be brought up with someone who's still a minor. I tried building a genuine connection with them, but they all act dismissive to me and acted like I was annoying whenever I tried to talk in the conversation. Needless to say, I didn't like them that much. Haley, on the other hand, was all about them. She would pull the same exact habits, jokes, dirty words and all of that with the others. They could say something super problematic, but she would be laughing right along with them. I was shocked by this version of Haley because she never acted like this to me when we were just talking the 2 of us. We still talked a bunch, but slowly, she was talking to her other friends more than she was talking to me. At first, I thought I was fine, but the more she ignored my messages or didn't pick up my calls, the more I got bothered. When I called to confront Haley about blowing me off, she went ballistic on me, saying that I was being selfish and that I didn't want her to talk to her other friends because I was jealous. I explained that wasn't true, but she wouldn't listen and then hung up on me. Haley then ghosted me for almost a month, leaving me worried and upset over what happened. When she started talking to me again, I was so emotionally distraught. I was crying on our first call and apologizing for what I said the last time we talked. She told me it was fine, she just needed some time alone, and that she would talk to me a bit more. And indeed she did, although not what I thought she would. Haley began to tell me she had depression, and that's the reason why she wouldn't talk to me for a month. I didn't judge her about it, and said whatever she needed to talk about, she could come to me. This led to her trauma dumping on me nearly every day, talking about how shitty her home life was, how bad her relationship with her mom, and how much she hated herself. I was there to offer her an ear and some kind words whenever Haley called or messaged me about it. This quickly became part of our routine. Almost daily, in the middle of us having any kind of conversation, she would begin complaining about anything that happened during the day. If not that, it would go on about how ugly she thought she was, or how much her life sucked, and wanted things to end. That last one freaked me out the most. I was worried about her because we lived in different states. I couldn't help her in person. Every time she would become self-deprecating, I would say otherwise, giving her compliments and words of affirmation for so long that my throat ached and felt raw. And then, just as fast as she would bring it up, she'd drop that conversation and we would talk like before. Haley also began calling me for long periods of time and messaging me late into the night. Phone calls would stretch on for hours at a time, and her texts would come in until 3 or 4 in the morning. The thing was, it was mainly her talking now. Every phone call, she'd take over the conversation. If I didn't message her back quickly enough, she'd spam multiple texts back to back faster than I could read them. I would try to end them myself, but every time I would try, Haley would chastise me for wanting to leave our conversation, when not too long ago I wanted to have her attention. She basically guilt-tripped me back into talking to her, and it worked. Even if I had lost interest in our talks or didn't want her to message me during class, I would still let her talk and reply. At least I still had her attention, and she still wanted to talk to me. This all went on in a cycle of over 2 years, and it left me feeling more anxious and exhausted than anything else ever did. I felt like we had nothing in common anymore, and she either ghosts me for a week or spends the entire weekend texting me nonstop. The topics of her self-worth having also gotten worse. They escalated to her messaging me, "Goodbye," or "I can't live like this anymore," without responding to any of my following messages or calls. Alongside of that, she would send me a picture of her marking herself, telling me about how it felt to do it. The sight of those messages would send me into a panic attack, and every time I would panic and message her after, I would be sent into tears. Not only that, the group chat with her friends got worse. Arguments broke out frequently. Drama and gossip spread like an oil spill, and it led to people being blocked, unblocked almost every few days. I hated talking to them. They began ganging up on me in the messages, and Haley was often the first one to make rude jokes about me that they would all laugh at. I began getting sick of it and would stop messaging and calling both Haley and her friends, despite her begging me to. One night, while the group was in an argument over text, I hit my breaking point. I was tired of all the drama and them treating me like shit all the time. So I messaged the group chat telling them that I had enough of them and privately messaged Haley that I needed a break. Then I left both chat rooms, blocked everyone I talked to, deleted my message account, and deleted the site from my computer history. Once it was all over, I felt like I was freed from some kind of prison, and all I could do was cry in relief and euphoria over the whole thing being over. I later found out that all the pictures Haley had sent to me were stock images and photoshopped. I also found out from a little bit of digging through her background, a lot of things didn't add up. I learned that she was actually a lot older than what she originally told me, at least 6 years older than me, meaning that the first time when we met, she was about to be 20 years old. Many things from our interactions still haunt me, especially the picture of her marks and her self-hating messages. For almost 3 months, I would have nightmares about Haley getting back in contact with me and what she would say and do to me. I have many better friends now, and I'm absolutely certain I'll never hear from Haley again. But sometimes, I still wonder who that woman really was and what it was about me that she was interested in. Hopefully I'll never find out. So Haley, if you somehow ever find this story, let's not meet again.